Episode 12, Rescue on Ryloth of Star Wars The Bad Batch, is pretty incredible. It has a pretty incredible specific scene near the end of the episode that I mainly want to cover in this review and kind of breakdown of the episode. I kind of really want to go quickly through the rest of the episode. Essentially, the rest of the episode is the whole beginning part of it and everything is the Bad Batch coming in and helping Hera rescue her parents from the Empire because they were captured. So the whole episode, we see Captain Howzer again, and they're talking about the situation that had happened beforehand. And Captain Howzer is the big topic of this episode for me personally. And of course, we start out with them talking about it. And Howzer is once again questioning orders, and he's not wanting to go forward and hunt down or find Hera and go after Captain Syndulla's people. He doesn't want to do that, and he's very, very reluctant to do that. Meanwhile, Hera, of course, recruits the Bad Batch to help her out. We already knew this would probably happen. They go back to Ryloth, and while they're at Ryloth, Crosshair does suspect that the Bad Batch is there. So, with the probe, it was a probe droid that found the Bad Batch, and they got alerted that the Bad Batch were there on Ryloth. So they're already their whole cover is already blown away. It's already blown. But either way, the Bad Batch is now helping Hera along with Chopper. Pretty cool to see this little backstory continue with Hera, of course. And that was kind of the big highlight for the episode last week for me. But personally, again, it was a really good episode. Like in general, it was a really good episode. But there was one scene at the end that just really made it spectacular. So we see more of Howzer. He's talking with Cham, and Howzer is really questioning his loyalties to the Empire, which is very, very strange because these clones are supposed to be under the order of Order 66, and we see that Order 66 not only, made them execute the Jedi, but it made them extremely loyal to the Empire. Like, it made them not disobedient at all. They are strictly Empire. Empire's the greatest. That's how the clones are now, and that's how we've seen them pretty much up to this point now. Besides a few that have gotten their chips out, that's all we've really seen. The closest we saw was like Rex with his, his slight hesitation for shooting Ahsoka before he ended up, executing Order 66 as well. So Howzer again is the big focus of this episode, probably for a lot of people going into this one. And essentially the Bad Batch go in, they rescue Captain Syndulla, his wife, and all the main Twi'leks that we saw in the last episode. They rescue them, and while they are in this rescue mission, the Bad Batch had set a diversion attack, and Crosshair sensed that the Bad Batch were actually right there in the home, and they were rescuing Cham while this diversion was going on. And he sent his people to stay there. He kept them there. He kept his squad there to look out for the Bad Batch because Crosshair knows them, obviously, so he's gonna know. And then he sets place, and he waits for the Bad Batch and Cham to get out because he suspects them to be coming out of the home here, and obviously they are. And before they can do that, of course, Captain Howzer confronts the Bad Batch and Cham, and he tells them that I'm going to try to talk to my squad, try to talk them down because he thinks this is wrong. He officially just straight up admits that this is a wrong thing and the Empire is doing wrong. The Empire is not right in this situation, and he's turning against the Empire, which is a complete 180 from what we've seen pretty much at any clone ever. Now, I go back to the episode with Captain Rex and the Bad Batch, where Captain Rex mentions how there were very few who were immune to the effects of Order 66. I think Captain Howzer is one of those very few clones. Captain Howzer has almost no effects from Order 66 from what we can tell. Now, we don't know all the aspects about Order 66 and how it operates, but Order 66 was, of course, the order to execute the Jedi. But we saw after that, they were still controlled by the chips, and they were still, obedient to the Empire. And they're very, in the beginning of the Bad Batch series, we saw the clones are much more cold now, and it changed their whole personality. But Howzer here, Captain Howzer, he almost seems like he's a normal clone from the Republic, and he hasn't changed at all. Like, it's super strange, and I don't know what to really make of this. Does he even have a working chip? Does his chip even work? I honestly don't know. Maybe something happened and his inhibitor chip just doesn't work. I don't know. It's really strange. So we see them come together. He's going to help them out. He's going to try to talk down his squad. His squad is out there with part of Crosshair's crew out there, and they're waiting to confront them and, arrest them, of course. And here he is. The door's open, and he talks down his squad. Yes, surprisingly, Captain Howzer is able to get a hold of a few of his members of his squad, and he's actually able to talk them down and turn against the Empire. The Empire that they are so loyal to with the inhibitor chip. He's actually able to talk to normal clones, not, Crosshair Squad, they're not clones, but the clones that are behind those few in the front. The normal clones who obeyed Order 66, I would assume, and they've been obeying Order 66 pretty strictly. He turned a few. He literally turned a few by his words. He said, this is wrong. This is not what we should be doing on Ryloth. We are not protecting Ryloth. And he actually made a good point. And some of them turned their weapons down. He dropped his weapon, and so did a few of the clones. You can see a few of them here in the middle. They stand up. They drop their shields. They drop their weapons. And we see them, of course, get arrested, but he didn't turn all of them. Not all of the clones turned against the Empire and, went with Howzer. Only a few of them did, but he, along with the other ones that, ended up turning against the Empire, of course, got arrested. But this is a big turning point for Order 66. Order 66 has been overridden. In some way, in some weird way, these clones turned their back on the Empire. And this is going into the whole theory of how there could be a clone uprising, maybe on Camino, where, the Bad Batch end up coming in and maybe, convincing all the clones or doing something with their chips to make them turn on the Empire. And that ultimately results in the Empire using stormtroopers and recruits rather than using clones, because the clones are not that effective in the endgame because they're not going to be loyal to the Empire. And that would be a very, very good storyline to set up for the Empire, because the stormtroopers are garbage. Honestly, the stormtroopers that we see later on in the Empire, they're terrible. They're so terrible. They're so pointless. They don't do anything almost. They're just unskilled recruits, really. Honestly, they don't do a whole lot. Their strength is in numbers. That's what the Empire does. So we can see where the storyline's going, that maybe this is why clones aren't used in the Empire, which would make a lot of sense. So you can see here the few clones in the back. There's like 4, 5, 6 clones in the back that had turned, and there's obviously some that are arresting them. So not all of them turn against the Empire, which is just very, very interesting. Now, Crosshair's also up on the balcony over here watching. He's ready to snipe anyone who is a danger or a threat to the clones that are there waiting. And that's kind of how the episode ends. It ends with also Hera and the Bad Batch parting ways, and her family. She goes off to explore her new piloting adventure that we see in Rebels, I would assume. But the end scene here in the Bad Batch episode, episode 12 here, is between Crosshair and Rampart. And Rampart is really looking up to be a really cool villain for this show, by the way. He's I didn't really think much of him before. Obviously, he's a brand new character, and he looks like a pretty generic Imperial officer, honestly. But we're really seeing a lot more of, his thinking and how he, operates. And he's a pretty cool villain. He really, really is. And obviously, we get more of Crosshair. We see this interaction where Rampart is very, very critical of the Bad Batch, and he's really, really getting tired of the Bad Batch, and he gives Crosshair the go-ahead to go in and hunt down the Bad Batch, which is weird because I thought that's what Crosshair was pretty much doing already, but I guess Crosshair wants to go after the Bad Batch again and hunt them down. So we're going to see more of that. And what I want to talk about with this scene here is Crosshair almost looks like he's conflicted once again. We had this before in episode 3, and it didn't really mean anything. It honestly did not mean anything. He went ahead and did a bunch of terrible things right after that. But Crosshair is continuing to see these different things with the Bad Batch, and now these clones who had turned against the Empire. I honestly don't know what Crosshair's thinking right now. Is he still fully loyal to the Empire? Is he reconsidering? Because, his chip wasn't fully working to begin with. Alright, so his chip has issues. Whether they amplified it or not, his chip has issues, and it makes you wonder, maybe his injury caused it to, not work as well again. That's just another theory that's going around. But Crosshair, once again, looks like he's contemplating if he wants to actually serve the Empire. I think that's purposely done. I don't know if he actually is, but it would be very cool to see this type of storyline go with Crosshair. Either way, whatever they're doing with Crosshair is really cool, so I'm quite excited. But this episode, it was absolutely fantastic. Like, that whole last few minutes of the episode really made it worth it. I really do like the storyline with Hera. I definitely do. I like the Syndulla family and whatever, the Ryloth stuff. It was really cool. I really love seeing Chopper as well. But after seeing this scene, this is all I could really think about. And Captain Howzer is honestly one of the coolest clones I've seen in a while. I'm personally experiencing now the favoriting like a clone right off the bat when you see them on screen. I never really had that experience when I watched the Clone Wars, because a lot of people grew up watching the Clone Wars. I ended up watching it a little bit later on Netflix, and that was, many years ago now, of course. But I ended up watching it when it was all out already, so I didn't really have that experience of watching it when it was out. And I'm watching the Bad Batch now when it's out, and Captain Howzer is a really cool clone. He really is a really, really cool clone. It's cool to see different clones like this and how they're turning their back on the Empire. It never really seemed like he was fully in on the Empire gig, and now he's been arrested. So I really hope we see more of Howzer. I was really worried he's going to die in this episode. Luckily, he did not, so we could easily see him again if they wish to bring him back. It'd be really cool to see him with the Rebellion, with Captain Rex and everyone, but we'll have to wait and see. He's obviously not really seen again after, this era. We haven't seen this character before. He's brand new. So, if they want to fit him in somewhere, they could, but we haven't seen him anywhere else, so maybe he will die eventually. I don't know, but Captain Howzer, super cool clone character, and I love these clones. I just love clone stories so much. The Clone Wars, the Bad Batch, even Rebels, they did it so well. I love it. It is so good. Dave Filoni's work is just so amazing. It's so good. So I'm interested to see where they go. I think we're going to 16 episodes. This is episode 12, and we've got like 4 episodes left. The Bad Batch, and after that, the season 1's over. That is my quick review and breakdown of the Bad Batch episode 12, Rescue on Ryloth. It's more just a breakdown of that end scene that was just fantastic. It was so good. It was so well done. It brings up so many more theories and questions that we don't know about Order 66, and I'm quite interested to see where they go next with it.